down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel. It's 10 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, in an extraordinary snub to the people of this country, Joe Biden will not be attending King Charles's coronation in May. So much for the special relationship. In the big story, should the West take out Vladimir Putin to end the war in Ukraine? Is assassination an option? My Mark Meets guest is Dragon's Den star Paul Turner, a talented British butcher who achieved an £80,000 investment from the notoriously hard-to-please Peter Jones and is now sitting on an empire. Big guests, big stories, and always big opinions. I'll be dealing with Joe Biden after the headlines with Aaron Armstrong. Let's get you up to date with the latest from the GB newsroom. It is being reported extra ferries will sail overnight from the port of Dover as it works through the Easter getaway backlog. Some passengers arriving at Dover have been delayed for up to 16 hours and have described the backlog as absolute carnage and a shambles. Several coachloads of adults and children have been there since yesterday. The port's blamed lengthy French border processes and sheer volume. It claims to have had 15% more coaches this year than anticipated. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says it's not the first time many families will have experienced this.
I think the nature of the frustration will be not again. This is not the first time there have been problems at Dover. And the government needs to get a grip of this and plan ahead. We can't have every summer holiday, every Easter holiday, the same old problem. And so the government needs to get a grip of this and actually help people out who are just trying to get away for a few days holiday.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has described Russia taking over the presidency of the UN's top security body as absurd. Each of the Security Council's 15 members takes the role for a month on a rotating basis. Now, the last time Moscow held the post was February 2022, when its troops launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Russia's President Vladimir Putin is currently facing an international arrest warrant for alleged war crimes, and Zelensky says this decision shows the institution's total bankruptcy.
There is no form of terror that Russia has not already committed, and there will be no reason that will stop the reform of global institutions, in particular the UN Security Council. The reform that is obviously overdue to prevent a terrorist state and any other state that wants to be a terrorist from destroying the peace. Terrorists must lose, must be held accountable for terror, and not preside anywhere.
At least 11 people have been killed after tornadoes swept through the south and Midwest of the United States. A state of emergency has been declared in Arkansas and in Missouri, where homes have been destroyed and vehicles flipped over. Officials say more than 40 tornado reports were made across 7 states on Friday,
with Illinois, Indiana, Alabama and Mississippi also impacted. Government plans that could see polluting water companies facing unlimited fines have been dismissed by opposition parties. There were, on average, more than 800 sewage spills per day into England's waterways in the last year. That's according to official figures. Now, ministers want to lift the current penalty cap of £250,000, but Labour has described it as a flimsy regurgitation of old ideas. TV online, DAB Plus radio and on TuneIn as well. This is GB News. Now get ready. Here's your Saturday night with Mark.
My thanks to Aaron Armstrong, who's back in an hour. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. In my big opinion, in an extraordinary snub to the people of this country, Joe Biden will not be attending King Charles's coronation in May. So much for the special relationship. In the big story, should the West take out Vladimir Putin to end the war in Ukraine? Is assassination an option? We'll talk to a top military figure on that one. My Mark Meets guest is Dragon's Den winner Paul Turner, a talented British butcher who achieved an £80,000 investment from the notoriously hard-to-please Peter Jones and is now sitting on an empire. At 10, it's Dolan's Diary, my look back at the week's big stories and why I upset Remainers on my show last night. I got dogs abuse. You won't want to miss my response. We've got Kinsey Schofield stateside with the big stories from the US, including Donald Trump. Is he on his way to jail? So all of that, plus Mark Dolan tonight is the home of the papers, with tomorrow's front pages from 10:30, with 3 top pundits who haven't been told what to say and who don't follow the script. Tonight, journalist and broadcaster John Sargent, Deputy Leader of UKIP Rebecca Jane, and legendary actor and entertainer Christopher Biggins. Tonight I'll be asking the pundits, is woke sex education driving parents to homeschool their children? As the government make it easier for landlords to evict vulnerable tenants, do we need to bring back squatters' rights? And as Rupert Murdoch spends £2 million on an engagement ring, how much should ordinary blokes spend to show their love? Plus your emails, especially the spicy ones, mark@gbnews.uk. You know I'll read them out. And this show has a golden rule. We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. So, a big 2 hours to come. Let's get to work, and we start with my big opinion. The leader of the free world, Joe Biden, a man less equipped to perform his duties than a eunuch on his wedding night, has interrupted one of his many daytime naps in order to announce that he will not be attending the King's coronation. The UK, America's closest ally, an economic, military and diplomatic partner on the world stage, will not be honoured with the presence of a man so decrepit he makes the cast of Last of the Summer Wine look positively sprightly. The only advantage of Biden not coming is that at least he won't turn up and forget King Charles's name and call him Princess Diana or something. But this decision by the president and his team is an extraordinary insult to the United Kingdom. Every world leader you can shake a stick at will be there, apart from the head of state of our greatest friend, with whom we partnered to defeat Adolf Hitler in the Second World War. Instead, we're told, we'll be fobbed off with an appearance by his other half, Dr. Jill Biden. Now, to be fair, I do like this lady, and it's impressive that he's married to a doctor, although these days he'd be better off married to a crack team of nurses. You do have to ask yourself, would he last the flight? I suspect we'd lose him somewhere over Belgium, as he's halfway through The Hangover 2. Ultimately, this is an extraordinary diplomatic insult. It's not surprising from a Democratic Party that seems to have an institutional chip on its shoulder about the United Kingdom, with endless Democrats banging on about the British Empire and our links to slavery, which, yes, were horrific, but neglecting to mention that it was the United Kingdom that ended slavery decades before the Americans got around to it. And it was, of course, America that shipped slaves straight to their mainland, which we never did. and had effective apartheid in the 50s and 60s before the brilliant civil rights movement kicked in. But now they want to give us a kicking by snubbing our impressive and dynamic new king on his big day. We're used to this. Don't forget it was President Obama who disgracefully tried to intervene in British politics when he urged Brits not to vote for Brexit in 2016, saying that if we had the temerity to restore our sovereignty and go it alone, we would be, and I quote, at the back of the queue for a trade deal. What a way to speak to your closest ally. Can you imagine if a British Prime Minister spoke out in relation to an issue within American politics? It wouldn't happen, and they wouldn't have it, and rightly so. After all, they got mightily cheesed off when my old mate Piers Morgan got involved in the gun debate when he hosted a show on CNN. The Americans don't want to be dictated to by a foreign power, and neither do we. Take Biden's unhelpful interventions in regard to the Northern Ireland Protocol, which was skewed towards the interests of the EU and against the best interests of the people of Northern Ireland and the whole of the UK. Stay in your lane, Big Joe. Which, by the way, when it comes to it, will be the final nail in the coffin for Remainers everywhere. Do you know what that is? A trade deal with Donald Trump. At that point, Britain becomes an unstoppable global economic force. But it won't happen under Joe Biden, who I consider to be no great friend of this country. He didn't even answer the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson's calls when he organised America's disastrous evacuation from Afghanistan. This treatment of King Charles is a shocker, and millions of proud Americans will be ashamed at their president's behaviour in not turning up. I know most Americans would want their great country to be represented for this massive moment in history, the installation of a new British king following on from the iconic reign of Elizabeth II. Rather than sending his other half, Jill Biden, perhaps he should send another US icon. Mickey Mouse will get far more sense out of him. So much for the special relationship, folks. With friends like these, who needs enemies? Reacting to my big opinion, I'm delighted to have Rebecca Jane, John Sargent and Christopher Biggins. Great to see all three of you again. John, what do you make of this diplomatic slight?
It's not as bad as you think, I think. President Biden's got to come over for to mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. So that's coming up very soon, in the next, over the next week or so. He's coming to Belfast. He was here for the funeral of the Queen. He arrived late with his wife. Rishi Sunak is going to Washington in June. So the idea that the special relationship is crumbling and is all over, I don't think so.
He ought to be there, though, surely. The messaging isn't great, is it?
If he could, no, if he was younger and if he was fitter, of course he'd be here. But he's not. He's not young. He's not very fit. So this is a sensible way from their point of view, and I'm sure it's understood on the British side too. Don't have him travelling all over the world, otherwise he may not survive.
Well, Rebecca Jane, is it a comment on his health or a comment on his attitude to this country?
I think it's health, personally. And I don't have much time for him. Trump all the way for me. But I don't think it's a major loss to us. Yes, of course, he should be there. I don't think he's fit and capable at all. So, fair enough, stay at home, have a little rest, send somebody else. For me, Joe Biden is a token figure in America. But I don't think he's truly leading the country.
OK, perhaps so, but he is the president, and I think it's unacceptable that the figurehead of that country is not going to be there in May.
I can see why you think that that's unacceptable. And I agree to a certain extent. I think that it's even more unacceptable that he's the leader of America. He should just step down and move aside for somebody else who's capable.
Now, I take John's points on board, but Christopher, you are from the world of showbiz. You know about messaging, about imagery, and this is not a good look, is it?
It's not. I don't think it's a good look at all. He should make the effort. I think it's probably down to air miles. He doesn't have enough.
He's run out.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think, you know, what they should do to represent the wonderful country of America, the United States of America, is to invite Tom Cruise in his place. Because Tom Cruise lives here anyway, and it's not going to... He's not much travelling would be involved, and he'll be much more appreciated by the British public.
He's too small, though, isn't he?
Well, I think you could put him on a sort of thing, couldn't you?
The other pages.
Yeah, exactly. You could lift him up.
Have him on a plinth.
Seriously, though, I do think it's bad. I mean, I think, you know, it's... And considering everybody else is coming, you know, and it's a big... Coronations don't happen every day of the year, do they? They look at the last one we had.
Well, we might have 2 this century.
Yes, that's possible.
So it's a very important
possible
moment for this country.
Yeah.
And I just my concern is that the Democratic Party, and I think they've had some good presidents. I didn't even mind Obama, to be honest, on balance. But I do think they've got a chip on their shoulder about the UK.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there is that feeling that it comes across, and I think Joe Biden really accentuates that. I think he really puts it forward.
Well, do you remember when he refused an interview with the BBC?
That's
right. He
right.
said, I'm Irish, I don't like the BBC.
Exactly. I mean, he has his opinions of this country.
The point about all these things is he's mixing it in terms of American politics. He wanted to emphasise that he was Irish, because that helps him. Right. I don't think this will hurt him much, not coming to the coronation, honestly. I don't think... It's nice to think of all these Americans saying that they would be shocked and upset. I don't think so, but maybe I'm wrong.
But don't you think the Americans love our royal family? And I think that's one of the reasons that...
I mean, they'll be more interested in whether Harry's going to be there or not.
Well, I wonder about that.
You know,
yeah, let's hope not. We've suffered enough. Do you think, though, John, I mean, does this reflect a diminished view of the United Kingdom from the point of view of the Americans?
No, I think what it shows, I suppose, is that Biden is determined not to get too involved around the world. So there is a sense in which, compared with, say, Macron, who goes around the world all the time, he's in China now, he was in Africa recently, he travels all the time, and people think, why can't you concentrate a bit on what's going on at home? And Biden is clearly making the decision that if he is going to stand for another term, he's really got to build up his political base. There's always the great threat of Trump. We're going to hear more and more about Trump because of the trial, if there is a trial. And from Biden's point of view, it's I'm afraid, domestic politics, which he really is concerned about. And if he thought it was dangerous domestically, he would come. He would say, OK, I've got to do it.
But it must be his age as well. That must be a big consideration.
I think that's the only consideration. I genuinely believe it's only because of his age and his illnesses.
And he's probably being told by, you know, his doctors, and probably Jill Biden is saying, look, I think it's good you stay home for this one, because he's coming over, as you said.
Well, it's not a great... It's not a great...
over in a week's time.
Given the fact that there's a war raging in the East, John, we'll talk about that next, it's not a great vote of confidence that the leader of the free world, a man with access to that many nuclear weapons, is so decrepit. I mean, when you were at ITN and the Beeb, you've reported on some fairly competent and some fairly incompetent prime ministers. But have you ever known a leader this incapable of doing the job?
Well, it's certainly... I don't know, people always like to look down on the American president, because the American president is always appealing in a sort of simple way. He wants to be the guy that you want to have a barbecue with. Now, it's a very different way of politics. We watch it and we think, God, what a stupid idiot.
We had it with Reagan and with W. Bush.
But it turns out a lot of these people, Bush particularly, the young Bush, was brought up in Connecticut, the son of a president, and people treated him as if he was some kind of crazy oaf from Texas. He wasn't at all. I met him. I mean, he was a very bright, very tough guy. And the idea that you could just dismiss him as a fool and saying stupid things about entrepreneurs and what's the French for entrepreneurs, one of the things he was meant to have said. He didn't, of course, but that didn't stop people going at him. And there is a tradition in Britain of looking down on American presidents. I wish they wouldn't do it.
Well, this one's easy to do that with, I would suggest. But what do you think? Mark at gbnews.uk. Do you think that Biden's absence from the coronation is an insult to the King and to the British people? Mark at gbnews.uk. Coming up next in the big story, should the West take out Vladimir Putin to end the war in Ukraine? See you in 2.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my common sense crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel. Is Joe Biden's absence from the King's coronation an insult to Britain? Well, this from Colin. Maybe Biden can't do the Atlantic twice in a short time. How about this from Peter? Thank goodness for John Sargent for a bit of perspective. It matters not a jot that Biden will not be at the coronation. Wayne says, hi, Mark. I'm not sure that Sleepy Joe would make it through the coronation without a kip or a few visits to the boys' room. I love it. And also, how about this from Philip? Hi, Mark. The reason why Biden is not going to the coronation is because there is no chocolate chip ice cream on the menu. Nicely done. Thank you, Philip. Keep those emails coming. Mark at gbnews.uk. In fact, we put it out as a Twitter poll. We'll bring you the results of that very, very shortly. But let's talk about this now. It's time for the big story. And a retired at top CIA chief, James Olsen, has said that the West must take out Vladimir Putin to end the war in Ukraine. Would this be the right thing to do? Is it ethical? Is it legal? Could it be done? Who would replace Putin? How would the world react? To look into this extraordinary idea, I'm delighted to welcome former strategic intelligence analyst Ewan Grant. Mr. Grant, welcome to Mark Dolan tonight.
Thank you.
First of all, is it logistically possible to take out Vladimir Putin?
Very, very difficult indeed. He has multiple levels of security with a lot of fail-safes.
What might those fail-safes be?
There would be dummy cars, duplicate convoys.
Pretending that he's in one of those cars?
Yeah. Duplicate helicopters.
Right.
switching the bodyguards at times between different services, because you've got the FSB, of course, but you've also got the Special Presidential Guard, and of course you've got the backup of the military. Very, very difficult.
Does he have body doubles as well? Does he have actors playing him?
I wouldn't rule it out. I suspect probably not. And they, of course, would only work at certain distances. They wouldn't really work close up. But I wouldn't rule it out. Such things have been known. We did, and certainly saw that with Saddam Hussein, didn't we?
Most of the world would like to see the back of this man. Why is it so difficult to make this strike?
Well, we shouldn't do it. It's quite simply no. I suspect Mr. Olsen will have his motives for saying that. He might want to be on a chat show. No, absolutely not. This would harm opinion in the global south. It would harm those who are equivocal in the West, and there are far too many of those who are apologists for Russia, not Russians, but apologists for Russia. This would be an absolute disaster.
If you were in a time machine, you would go back and you would take out Adolf Hitler.
Yes, we were directly at war, and he was, of course, the commander-in-chief. Mind you, of course, Putin's the commander-in-chief in name and in fact. We are in a proximate war. We're not in a direct war.
Could and should Ukraine take Putin out? Zelensky himself?
That is a different thing, because, of course, it's a direct war there, and he is a combatant. And, of course, we have good reason to believe that they certainly tried to capture him, and I wouldn't be surprised they wanted to kill him. They wanted to kill Zelensky.
So actually,
that's a different
strategically,
issue.
their intention probably is to take Putin out because they consider themselves at war with Russia.
It won't be their top priority. Their top priority will be to hit targets and key personnel. And remember, at the moment, he's out of reliable range.
Could taking Vladimir Putin out create more problems than we currently have?
I'm talking now of replacing him, not necessarily. He may die of natural causes.
So you see this as a rather political conversation?
Yes, very much so. It's not a military one.
All right. And what are the circumstances by which he's replaced? How does that happen?
With chaos and brutal infighting, and with absolutely zilch attention to the Constitution and the Duma, the Russian parliament. This would be a pure power play.
OK, and that would be a coup in the Kremlin, essentially?
Well, a struggle for power in the way that it was after the death of Stalin.
Now, are you persuaded that Vladimir Putin is very ill and dying?
No. I think the evidence on that is ambiguous. We have to be careful to get into wishful thinking. We would like that, but the fact that we would like that to happen doesn't mean it will. We have
a lot
to
of
be
stories
prepared
floating
for the
around.
long haul.
A lot of stories floating around that he's on steroids, that he's got cancer. He was on that famous, the world's largest desk during COVID because he was so petrified of catching the virus.
I can assure you, Western intelligence will be doing all it can, both through signals intelligence and communications, but of course the Russians be very, very careful on that. But more, I think, good old-fashioned diplomacy and human intelligence to try and get hints. But it's almost certainly only going to be hints, not proof.
So what is the solution to this conflict?
We have to double down on support for Ukraine. We have to go to a semi-wartime economy as far as possible across the entire West, not just NATO, Five Eyes, which is Australia, and with key technological and industrial allies like Japan and Korea, and be prepared for the long haul.
But what does living under the circumstances of a sort of semi-war situation look like for my viewers and listeners?
Yes, I'm afraid it means higher taxes for longer and higher prices.
And more borrowing and cost of energy. And what about the timeline? From your expertise, how long do you think this conflict has to run? Are we talking months or years?
Years.
I had a historian on the show, Martin Whittock, last year, and he said it was going to be the forever war. Is that overstating it?
No. That might be an exaggeration, maybe. All wars eventually come to an end, but it depends how you define them as ending. I've worked in Ukraine on the border with Transnistria, the Russian puppet state, carved out of Moldova, wholly illegally, of course, and not recognised, and indeed, it's worth remembering, not recognised by Russia itself either. Now, that has been going on since the collapse of the Soviet Union. We're now over 30 years.
Is Putin the problem, or is he the potential solution? Do the West need to hand this man a diamond-encrusted golden ladder to climb down?
I'm not sure he would take it. There's no harm in trying.
Hand the Russians the Crimea?
Well,
and allow him to go back to the Russian people and say, we've won?
I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out that way. There is the real possibility of unleashing the Black Sea Fleet for a full-scale blockade of Odessa and indeed down to Ukraine's international border on the Danube, if the Ukrainians got near to Crimea. But you've highlighted the key location. After Kiev, the key location is not the Donbass, it's the approach to Crimea.
Privileged to have you on the show. A sobering conversation, but it's important we live in the real world. My sincere thanks to former strategic intelligence analyst Ewan Grant. Ewan, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Coming up next with my brilliant pundits, of course, Rebecca Jane, Christopher Biggins and John Sargent. Is woke sex education driving parents to homeschool their kids? Would you homeschool your kids? Also, as the government make it easier for landlords to evict vulnerable tenants, do we need to bring back squatters' rights? And as Rupert Murdoch spends £2 million on an engagement ring, how much should ordinary blokes spend to show their love? See you in 2.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Should the West take out Vladimir Putin to end the war in Ukraine? Colin says, hi, Mark, talk to Putin. He wants to get out of this. Also, earlier, in relation to my big opinion, I believe it's a huge insult to the British people and the King that Joe Biden will not be appearing at the coronation in May. Well, a strong response on email. Sue says, hi, Mark, of course it's a snub and a sign of what he or whoever is pulling his strings thinks of royalty and the UK. He manages to get himself all around the world, and being too old is not an excuse. Still, I'd rather not see him in Britain, says Sue. Daniel says, to answer your question about Joe Biden not attending the coronation, no incumbent president has attended previous coronations, including Eisenhower in 1953. And Jeff simply says, the man is an embarrassment to the free world. Well, you do wonder whether his absence means that he won't say or do something rather silly. Now, back with me reacting to the big stories of the day. My three top pundits tonight: journalist and broadcaster John Sargent, the deputy leader of UKIP, Rebecca Jane, and actor and entertainer and TV host Christopher Biggins. Now, there's been a 50% increase in the number of children being homeschooled in the UK. As more and more stories emerge every day about inappropriate sex education classes, is woke brainwashing in the classroom driving parents to homeschool their children? I believe we've got a clip at one particular secondary school here in England. And this is a teacher talking about LGBTQ plus themes. Now, don't forget that some people think it's cool, but others think it's controversial. This is courtesy of the pressure group Turning Point UK. Take a listen to this teacher in a classroom.
And let me make this very clear. You don't have a choice whether or not you learn about LGBTQ+ in school. You don't have a choice. It's one of our values, the British values. And if you refuse to do it, that will be dealt with severely.
OK, well, look, there you go. It's pretty controversial stuff. It is literally non-negotiable that you're taught that stuff in school. Many would welcome it. Others think it's brainwashing. Rebecca Jane.
I didn't hear what they said.
Well, what this teacher, who's in a secondary school, said to his kids that these children don't have a choice but to learn about LGBTQ plus themes, which I guess includes gender ideology, the idea that, you know, maybe you're in the wrong body, you can swap sex, and that you have no choice. And if you do not engage with what's being taught, then you'll be in big trouble. There will be severe consequences.
I don't like it.
You've got kids.
I have kids. I also have a children's charity, and we go into schools and we work with children, and they tell us their issues. And there are a lot of children who have a lot of gender issues and sexuality issues, and they do need more help and support with them. That's one stance. But as a parent, the fact that they try and make this mandatory and enforce it is the bit that I don't like, because we're the parents. We should be the ones who get to say what our children are and are not taught within, you know, obviously certain remits. This is such a controversial subject that it should come back to the parents rather than the school saying, you have to learn this, and if you don't want to learn it, you'll be in big trouble. Why are we not teaching them freedom of their own mind and freedom of thought? What's wrong with that?
Well, yes, because, Christopher, the contentious issue here is that so-called gender ideology, which suggests that a man can become a woman and vice versa, that they can change their sex, is embraced by some but rejected by others. So it's a divisive idea. It shouldn't, therefore, perhaps be taught in school as fact.
As fact? Well, I'm not so sure it should be.
Or as non-negotiable, that you will learn about this.
No, I don't think...
if you don't, you'll be punished.
No, I think that's very wrong. I mean, certainly, I know I'm old, but that never happened to me at school. I mean, you know, and
What did happen to you?
I don't know quite. That's very little.
Well, I wouldn't change a thing, because we've got Biggins to show for it.
Well, I mean, but also, I think it was good how we were educated. I think to force children into these beliefs is wrong. And I think I can understand why more and more parents are taking their children out of school because they don't want it. Because they didn't have
don't necessarily want, and, you know, I don't know about you folks, but for me, I'm a great libertarian, and if you want to live by another gender, good luck to you, and I'll respect that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, we'll acknowledge it too. But I don't think a lot of parents want their kids being asked by a teacher, Are you a boy or are you a girl? What are you today?
I know, no, that's terribly wrong. And also what it's doing is it's influencing that child to make him think, well, what am I today? Am I a boy or am I a girl? You know, what, I mean, I think it's gone far too far. And I can understand, you know, there is. I mean, I know people who've become a man who's become a woman, who then 2 or 3 years later becomes a man again. And it's all to do with the mind. I mean, it's very, very psychological, the whole thing.
And at that age.
And that age, I know.
At 9 and 10 years old, how on earth can you decide your gender?
I know.
I change husbands every 3 years, for goodness sakes.
I don't blame you. Well, none of them are good enough.
I know.
Well, you're sat next to John Sargent tonight, so, yeah, there you go. Anything's possible. John, there is a flip side to this debate, which is that trans people are among the most victimised in our society. There's terrible prejudice. They're physically attacked sometimes. And therefore, perhaps these marginalised groups deserve representation in a school setting.
I'm not sure that this is the way to do it, if that's your objective. I think the key thing, of course, is to make sure that you're not encouraging people to think they're changing sex or not changing sex. And that is very difficult for a school to organise. I think it's very difficult for grown-ups to talk to kids about sex. I think they find it an odd subject that they want to talk about amongst themselves because they can giggle and they can think it's sort of exciting and they can explore it and all the rest of it. But the idea that someone talks to them about sex... We had a sex lesson at school, and the man who came to talk to us, he was horrible looking, by the way, enormous guy, horrible. Anyway, he started sort of suggesting whether or not... Well, the issue is whether or not on the holidays we'd go with prostitutes. I thought, blimey, it never crossed our minds that we might pay someone to have sex with them. But he was discussing it in a sort of, oh, and of course, on the one hand this, and on that, and venereal disease and so on. And I was 16 or something at the time. All right, I was innocent, young, and impressionable. But I thought this was pretty shocking, to be honest.
But they're now talking to children younger, aren't they? I mean, they're talking to
We need
6,
to
7 years
preserve
old.
children's innocence
I
for as long as
totally
possible.
agree.
And this is not going to do that.
No, absolutely.
Now, the government are changing legislation to make evicting vulnerable people from rental properties more easy. What do we think about this, Rebecca Jane? Is this bad news for tenants? And is it time to bring back squatters' rights?
Right, well, I had a little bit of a different theory on this until I read the article. So, I think it's a 3-strike rule that if you get reported for antisocial behaviour on 3 occasions, then you're out. And there's a domestic abuse charity that said that there is a 40% rise with people that are abused having one of these claims made about them as leverage, as a way of, you know, getting one-upmanship, as causing the person problems and trouble. So I think that, as ever, with the problem that we have with our country and our current government, is the devil is in the detail. And actually, you know, what is the qualification, what's the criteria for invoking this 3-stage rule or these 3 strikes and then you're out? I think it'd have to be really carefully looked at. Absolutely fine. If you've broken antisocial behaviour laws 3 times, genuinely, wholeheartedly, yeah, off you go, forget about it. But I think that the criteria and the threshold needs to be very high.
What do we think about tenants being slung out of their properties, especially if they're vulnerable?
Well, I think it's not a good idea at all. And I think if they're vulnerable, I mean, everyone needs nowadays to be secure in their homes. And, of course, it's not, because it's very difficult to get mortgages, it's very difficult to get rented property. So it's very difficult to get property to live in. And I feel, and I felt this all my life, that next to breathing, you should have a home. And you should have perhaps a small home. You should have 1 room and a kitchen and bathroom. And then, as you become more and more successful, you get another room and you get another bathroom.
John's got 10.
Yeah, I know. But, you know, it is I think it's wrong to not look after people. I mean, you see people now, more and more people now, on the streets, sleeping. I mean, I live in Hackney, and I go home and they're there, hundreds of them.
I think Christopher's on the main point here, which is really, we're back to the question of why can't we build more homes?
Yes, exactly.
You know, if we did that, and if we really concentrated, as they did after the war, when they started to build more and more homes, prefab homes, all right.
Prefab homes were wonderful.
They worked.
They did work.
And why we can't somehow get back to that straightforward, we can do it, because it would stop a lot of these arguments, which are way down the track, aren't they?
Definitely.
And there are so many people who are out of a home, which should be in a home. By the same token, there are people who like living on the streets. Then they should be looked after in a different way.
Or they've got mental health issues.
Or they've got, exactly. I mean, there are other problems.
You're so right. It's complex, it's nuanced, but I think the message from all three of my pundits is build, baby, build, and that would fix a lot of our issues. Now, what first attracted Anne Leslie to the multi-billionaire Rupert Murdoch? We'll never know. What we do know is that he spent $2 million on an engagement ring.
Cheapskate.
There you go. Exactly, that's small change for Mr. Murdoch. But how much should ordinary blokes spend to show their love for their other half? Christopher, are you in a civil partnership?
No, yes, I am. I am in a civil partnership.
So did that involve an engagement ring?
It did. In fact, I'm not wearing mine tonight. We both got Russian wedding rings.
Lovely.
Which are very nice.
Very cheap, aren't they?
Very cheap, very cheap. Actually, I don't know how much they were. But I think it's nice to have a symbol that you are together with someone. And you know, and I love Neil enormously, and he loves me. But I mean, I think that, you know, I suppose it should be I don't think it should be any amount. I think you should be able to give something, and that, you know, you may have gone to, in the old days, to Woolworths and bought a curtain ring that you could give someone, you know, and apart from the fact that making your finger discoloured, it was a good thing to have. But, you know, if you've got the money, and he should, I think, if you say a percentage of his earnings, I mean, he earns, what he's given her is nothing.
Yes, I think his net worth is something in the region of £17 billion.
Yes.
So he's got a few bob.
He's got some money.
John, I mean, the idea, I think, of... previously, it was 3 months' salary, wasn't it? That's what a man...
Was it?
Yeah, that's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
I mean,
it should be an amount of money that you can't quite afford, shouldn't it?
Yeah, no, the trouble is, of course, I'm affected by my own personal experience. Now, I've been married for 54 years.
Congratulations
now,
to lovely Mary.
When I was sort of going out with Mary, my mother suddenly said, oh, well, I've got a brooch which has a diamond and has a sapphire and diamonds round it. You might find it useful. I said, what for? And so he said, well, just take it. You might find it useful. And, of course, I then turned that into an engagement ring.
So you took one of the stones off the brooch?
No, the brooch was just taken and the jewellers then made it into, put a ring round it.
Sort of melted it down or put it on top of a ring? What did they do?
They put it down, yes. It had a claw, you know. Look, I'm not a jeweller.
This doesn't sound good now.
Politics. I don't do
it's all
jewellery.
gone very... It's like the Antiques Roadshow.
It's so big she can hardly lift her hand.
Put it this way, it's now worth a lot of money.
Poor Mary got a load of recycled old...
No, she loves it. She wears it to this day, and when I tell the story, she then presents it, and it gets a ripple of applause in any gathering.
I bet she threatens to chuck it in the River Thames every time you have an argument. Rebecca Jane, how much should a gentleman spend? I'll put my cards on the table. I spent £1,000 for Mrs. Dolan, which is a lot of money.
How long ago?
In those days.
This was 2003. A lot of dosh.
So 20 years
It's a lot of money.
Here's my thing. I'm not materialistic at all. So I would prefer something far more sentimental rather than something that just costs an absolute fortune, because somebody like that can go and chuck a load of money at something and solve a problem. I'm not into that. I like the brooch idea, but it went downhill.
No, it was part of it was sort of part of an arranged marriage.
It's worked with John and Mary, let me tell you. I've met Mary. They are a dream couple, I've got to say. Dream pundits, they'll be back shortly. Next up, my Mark Meets guest is Dragon's Den star Paul Turner, a talented British butcher who achieved an £80,000 investment from one of the dragons. He's next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Come back.
It's time now for this. Yes, it's time for Mark Meets, and this evening the butcher who convinced Dragon's Den entrepreneur Peter Jones to invest £80,000 in his business, which is called Alf Turner. This happened in 2012, and Peter Jones is still a partner 11 years on, and together they've sold nearly 13 million products to date. And the business has raised $250,000 for Help for Heroes, and they've even sent a Scotch egg into space. I kid you not, what a story. I'm delighted to say that Paul Turner, I think we can call him a celebrity butcher, joins us now. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. Good to be here.
What made you decide to go on Dragon's Den? For those that haven't seen the show, it's essentially a programme in which an entrepreneur, a budding entrepreneur, faces 4 investors and has to convince them to part with their money.
I needed to get some more traction. I'd started the brand in 2010. And I was struggling, just being a butcher and not having the sort of marketing
And the brand was Alf Turner. Yep. You're Paul Turner. Who is Alf Turner?
Alf Turner was my grandfather.
Right, and did he start the business?
He started the business.
Oh, actually, from the living room?
Yeah, from the front room of the family home in 1956. Knocked the front window out of the house and opened the butcher shop in the front room.
What did your grandma think of that?
I don't think she was that impressed, but we still trade from the same building today, so I still run the family butchers with my younger brother, Kevin.
Is that right? So
yep.
Did you knock the original house down and then build premises?
No, it's just extended into an end-of-terrace house has become a butcher shop. So
just wonderful.
Yeah. It's a bit different.
The rest is history. So you felt you needed a bit of publicity around what you were doing. You were going to go on TV to do that. Did you have any expectation that perhaps the most fearsome dragon of them all, Peter Jones, would be your partner?
To be honest, Peter was my target. Simply
but he's the hard one to get, isn't he?
He is, yeah. He's the original and the best dragon. I'm going to say that, but he is. He's a really good guy. Get along really well. But I'd seen what he'd done with Levi Roots when Levi went on, and how that had grown. And I thought, well, I'm coming from the same sort of line of it's a family business, something traditional. And hopefully Peter can see that in me. What
was your offer to Peter Jones? Because essentially you were flogging sausages, weren't you? So
yes.
What was the unique selling point?
We had won every national award in the UK with our sausages, and it was just the traditional way that my grandfather had passed down to my dad, and my dad had passed down to me and my brothers, and it was like, well, we seem to be doing well in the shop with them, perhaps we can flip this and put them on their supermarket shelves.
And now you are distributed at over 4,000 UK supermarkets, including Morrison's, Nisa and Waitrose. It's working, isn't it? It's a success.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's always tough, and you know, we'll keep pushing on and see if we can get more listings. The more products we can sell, the better it is. And from every product that we sell, we donate directly to the Help for Heroes charity. So,
well, Help for Heroes is an amazing charity. You've done so much. You've raised $250,000 with Alf Turner, your company. And I believe that in order to raise funds, you've actually propelled a Scotch egg into space.
Yeah.
Well,
yes.
not quite space, but...
We went into the stratosphere, I think, is the technical term. I think we hit about 79,000 feet. It was.
I think we've got some footage of this, actually, and it's a remarkable thing. Again, just to create some buzz around what you're doing.
At the time, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos were going into space at the time, so I thought, well, let's race them and see if we can beat them with a Scotch egg. So I'd been introduced to some ex-forces guys that do some high-altitude stuff, and... they said that they will do it. So we sent the stuff out and we launched the Dragon Egg into space just over New Mexico.
And there it goes. Anyone that's listening on the radio, let me just describe this tiny little inflatable balloon is carrying a Scotch egg into the stratosphere. It's just gone past Mercury, in case you're watching the pictures now as they play out. Absolutely spectacular. Well, look, it is a great cause. It's a great British brand as well. And are you concerned about veganism? What's your answer to veganism?
No, there's a place for everything. There is a place for everything.
Will you be doing vegan sausages?
No, it doesn't really stand with the sort of Great British Butcher's brand. So there's plenty of other products out there that will cater for those people. So I'll stick to what I'm good at and what I know.
Can we have it right as well on this one, Paul, which is that meat is really good for you? Right? And I don't want to get cancelled for saying that, because human beings are omnivores, and we've survived pretty well for millions of years eating animal produce, don't you think?
Well, I would say so. I'm a butcher. That's my trade. And yes, I definitely believe that meat is a high source of protein and really good for you.
And what about your relationship with your farmers? You must have some great partnerships out there.
Yeah, well, just all long-standing partnerships that we've had through the business, through the sort of 60-odd years that we've been open. Those sort of partnerships have been handed down, and we carry them on with myself and my brother. And yeah, it all works really well for us.
What is your favourite cut of steak?
Oh, I've got to say, probably the Côte de Boeuf at the moment.
Oh yeah, that's very nice, very tender.
It is indeed.
Yeah. Look, we've got so many things. We've got. Shall I have a little bite of this? You might need to cover me as I have a nibble.
Yeah, have a go with the dragon egg.
Alf Turner Dragon's Egg. By the way, your website, alfturner.com. If people want to buy your products, they need to go to one of the stores, you know, Waitrose, Morrison's, Nisa, but they can find out where you're distributed, I guess, on your website.
Yep, all the listings are there.
Okay.
So,
look, so let's have that was a bit of a close-up shot of my crotch there, wasn't it? I hope you enjoyed that. I can imagine ratings will be going through the roof. All right, time for a bite.
They do bite back, so it takes a couple of little seconds and you get the secondary kick.
Absolutely delicious. You've got the egg inside and very, very spicy. I'm giving that 5 stars. The Dragon's Egg. So this is a hot take on the Scotch egg.
Yep.
And then... what about this? What have we got here?
That's a chili pork crackling. So it's a new take on a pork scratching.
Should I be eating any more food tonight? I'm going to lose control. And Peter Jones, is he as scary in real life?
He's very, very tall.
Yeah.
And it was a very scary experience for me personally in the den. It was not my finest moment. I was terrified.
So why did he take pity on you? Normally, when you're weak, you're gone.
I don't think it was pity. I think he saw the sort of passion and enthusiasm I had. I was just having difficulty conveying it. So, but since then, we've been together, as a partnership for 11 years. He's a fantastic guy. We get along really, really well. He sent me a good luck text tonight as I was on my way here. So hopefully he's watching and seeing us promote the products.
Yeah, well, Peter Jones, if you are watching, let me tell you that I'm holding a packet of Alf Turner Help for Heroes Dragon's Fury Pork Crackling Scratchings, and I'm in. Next up, my take at 10. Don't go anywhere.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes & Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel. It's 10 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. Coming up, in Dolan's Diary, I'll tell you how I upset Remainers on Twitter this week just for being optimistic about Britain's future. I got dogs abuse. My response in a couple of minutes. The Queen of Royal and Showbiz reporting, Kinsey Schofield, brings us up to date on the latest from the US. Plus, the Sunday papers at 10:30. Uninterrupted, I should say, and we've got our top pundits covering that with their opinions. Big guests, big stories, big opinions. A very busy hour to come. First, the headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you, Mark. Let's get you up to date with the headlines from the GB newsroom. Extra ferries will sail overnight from the port of Dover as it works through the Easter getaway backlog. Coachloads of adults and children have been delayed for up to 16 hours and have described the situation as absolute carnage and a shambles. The port has blamed lengthy French border processes and sheer volume. It claims to have had 15% more coaches than anticipated. Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, says the government needs to take action.
I think the nature of the frustration will be not again. This is not the first time there have been problems at Dover. And the government needs to get a grip of this and plan ahead. We can't have every summer holiday, every Easter holiday, the same old problem. And so the government needs to get a grip of this and actually help people out who are just trying to get away for a few days holiday.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has described Russia taking over the presidency of the UN's top security body as absurd. Each of the Council's 15 members assumes the role for a month on a rotating basis. The last time Moscow held the post was in February 2022, when its troops launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Now, Russia's President Vladimir Putin is currently facing an international arrest warrant for alleged war crimes, and Zelensky says This demonstrates the institution's total bankruptcy.
There is no form of terror that Russia has not already committed, and there will be no reason that will stop the reform of global institutions, in particular the UN Security Council. The reform that is obviously overdue to prevent a terrorist state and any other state that wants to be a terrorist from destroying the peace. Terrorists must lose, must be held accountable for terror, and not preside anywhere.
2 women in Iran who've been attacked with yogurt for not covering their hair in public have been arrested. The footage, which has gone viral, shows a man getting increasingly animated with 2 female customers before throwing a tub of yogurt over their heads. Now, it's illegal for women in Iran to be seen in public without a hijab. Iran's judiciary says the attacker has also been arrested for disturbing the peace. At least 18 people are now known to have died following a series of tornadoes in the United States. There's been extensive damage to properties and vehicles across the south and midwest of the country, with states of emergency declared in Arkansas and Missouri. The power outage website, which tracks homes left without electricity in the country, says around 90,000 people in Arkansas alone have been affected, with 6 other states reporting difficulties. 2 teenage boys arrested on suspicion of murdering a pensioner who died after being robbed in her own home have been released on bail. The pair, aged 14 and 15 from the Lowestoft area, were being held by Suffolk police following the death of 82-year-old Joy Middleditch in the town of Pakefield after the incident last Saturday. The cause of death is yet to be confirmed. TV online, DAB+, radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark.
My thanks to Aaron Armstrong, who's back at 11. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. First up, it's Dolan's Diary, my look back at the week's big stories and why I upset the Remainers on my show last night. I got dogs abuse. Find out why shortly. The Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield, joins us. All the latest from across the pond. Uncle Joe Biden gaffes again, plus the latest on the president's coronation snub. And just how much trouble is Donald Trump really in? Plus, the Sunday papers at exactly 11:30 sharp, with 3 of the top pundits in the country. We have showbiz legend, the wonderful Christopher Biggins, TV news icon John Sargent, and political commentator and the deputy leader of UKIP, Rebecca Jane, the big hitters. Plus, we've got your emails, especially the spicy ones, mark@gbnews.uk. You know I'll read them out. Lots to get through, but first, Dolan's Diary. It's time now for Dolan's Diary, my look back at the week's big stories. Labour have been demonstrating their progressive credentials on International Trans Visibility Day, which happened this weekend. Given the fact that so-called gender ideology denies the existence of biological sex, what's highly visible to me is that a Labour government under Keir Starmer would mean 5 years of this woke anti-science hell. Labour also made noise this week with a tweet suggesting that Tory failure has left working people facing soaring bills. Now, I'll grant you the Tories have been pretty disastrous with their figures over the last few years. But here's a receipt that Labour have mocked up detailing the exact cost of housing, energy, food, clothing, travel and household essentials. They claim that the total amounts per family per year total £3,500. Credit to the political commentator Ben Abazi-Jetke, who points out that if you go through the receipt, the total is actually 3,480, not £3,500. Proof, if you needed it, that Labour's sums don't add up. Now, Mark Dolan Tonight is the home of viral videos, and last night's Big Opinion made quite the splash. I was upbeat about this massive new post-Brexit Trans-Pacific trade deal struck by the government. Take a listen. Future's ours and the future's bright. Bring on global Britain. With my glass half full, I'll drink to that. What was that drink? But arch Remainers on social media weren't happy with my optimistic vision for Brexit Britain. Tom 1990 said, are all the GB News presenters going to eat and buy these lower standard foods and goods? Bollocks, says Wendy. Smoke and mirrors and spin. Thanks, Wendy. Wielding outdated numbers also shared by the BBC, others quoted a disputed figure of a 0.08% boost to the economy from the New Deal and a 4% hit to GDP from Brexit itself. They're not very nice, some of these Remainers, are they? Camperman said, effing P. There's literally no part of that tweet that I can actually read on TV or the radio. And these are the nice people. Do keep up. How about this from David, who says, hopefully the wigs will be cheaper. Which I think is a reference to my gorgeous hair, all of which, let me tell you, is my own. Would you buy a wig that looks like this? And fair play to Cowsey, who doctored an image from the show, which reads, Mark's big opinion, the brain is half empty. They've literally spent time on that. Good to see that my detractors are so skilled in the art of Photoshop, and they've got enough of a schedule that they can do this kind of thing. It beats working for a living or having a girlfriend, doesn't it? So what does all of this tell us? Well, that so many Remainers are deeply intolerant of an alternative view. And 6 years on from the referendum, they still won't respect a democratic result. It also tells you that they're absolutely terrified of the idea that Brexit could be a huge success. What's terrifying is that they now need Britain to fail just to be proved right. And last but not least, Donald Trump is in legal hot water and could be the first US president to be arrested and charged with a crime, possibly facing jail. What Democrat supporters don't understand as they pursue this politicised witch hunt is that, yes, Trump will ultimately wind up accommodated in a state-run facility, but it will be the White House. Be careful what you wish for. And that was Dolan's diary. Reacting to the big stories of the day, three of the top pundits in the country. We have the fantastic broadcaster and comedian Christopher Biggins, TV news legend John Sargent, and political commentator and deputy leader of UKIP, the wonderful Rebecca Jane. So, Biggins, what stories caught your eye this week?
Well, very sad news that my dear friend and everyone's favourite entertainer, Paul O'Grady, passed away at the age of 67, which was no age at all. And he was brilliant in every single way. And, you know, Mark, I really hope that when any of us die, we stay around for at least 24, 48 hours to see those who come to our funerals. And we see those who are mourning us, because the outcry of this great comedian, this wonderful entertainer, has been huge. And I remember years and years ago going away with him, with Cilla Black, to her house in Spain. And we were down in the kitchen, Cilla and I, and Paul was upstairs. And Cilla said to me, "Can you smell cigarette smoke?" And I said, "Yes, he's at it." So Paul was told not to smoke. So I went up like a fierce matron and knocked on the door and said, "Paul, are you smoking?" He went, "No." I said, "You are, Paul, don't lie." Well, within 5 minutes, we were on the floor laughing hysterically. He was a brilliant, brilliant man. Shouldn't have smoked, but he will be sadly missed.
When people know that I am friends with you, Christopher, they say, is what you see what you get? Yes. Biggins is Biggins, on screen and off. What about the real Paul?
He was honestly... you know, his love of animals, I think, is the most extraordinary thing about him. And he's had that all his life. I remember going to visit him once in the country and sat on a pig, because I thought it was a cushion with a pig design on it, but it's a real pig. I mean, his house was open to everything that could move animal-wise. I mean, he just loved it. And he loved people, too. He was a great raconteur. I mean, tonight on the BBC, they showed a blankety blank that he did, and he was just superb as Lily Savage. You know, he was wonderful. He's given us so much pleasure over the years, and he will be sadly, sadly missed.
Also, Biggins, how many people in showbiz can have multiple careers? Because he was Lily Savage, which is this fantastic Liverpudlian Scouser, hard-drinking, hard-smoking woman. He took Lily Savage on tour, and, of course, as a TV star, And then he got rid of the wig, got rid of the dresses, killed Lily, and became Paul.
Who was an even bigger star than Lily. I mean, it was extraordinary. I mean, he has handled his career brilliantly, and he would have gone on forever if he hadn't been such a naughty boy and smoked.
So you feel that although he was very svelte, that his smoking obviously, you know, wasn't really going to be great for his health.
Well, I think he had about 3 or 4 heart attacks, if I'm right, you know, and I don't think it was helped by the smoking. And he did it secretly, too. That was the other thing.
Biggins, he's left a young husband. That's a great loss as well.
It is a great loss. He's a lovely boy, and he will be surrounded by lots and lots of friends, though, which I'm pleased about, and animals too. I hope he can cope with the animals.
Yeah, especially the pig.
Yeah, especially the pig.
The pig that was squashed by Biggins. What a story!
I know.
That's a celebrity.
What a way to go.
That's a starstruck pig. John, by the way, thank you, Christopher, for helping us remember the comic genius that was Paul O'Grady. John, what's caught your eye this week?
Well, I suppose really it's this rising hysteria, frankly, about artificial intelligence. So we're told this is dangerous, then we're told it really is dangerous, then we're told we're going to have to watch out, it's going to be worse than the Industrial Revolution. And then yesterday we're told that the Italians have banned the latest AI super machine. It's called ChatGPT, GPT. You may have heard of it. It does all sorts of essays for you and tells you how to write a letter complaining about a parking ticket and everything else that you might want to know about everything. Anyway, the Italians have said, no, that's it. And if they don't get a proper answer within, I think, 20 days, they're going to fine the company millions of pounds. Now, Microsoft, the company involved, have spent billions of dollars creating this thing. And I think people will look back on this and say, well, this is like people destroying machines in factories in the 19th century. And that people were just saying, this is Luddite, you know. You can't stop these machines, they're coming. And I don't think you can stop them going to Italy either.
No machine, no computer will ever be a better journalist than John Sargent, though, let me tell you that. Let me put that on record. Rebecca Jane, what have you been talking about and tweeting about this week?
Gosh, what am I not tweeting about? Yeah, so actually one that caught my eye today, and I think it's a topic that you're quite passionate about as well. There was an investigation by one of the newspapers into vaping and specifically into shops luring children and obviously having vaping on one side and sweets on the other. And for me, it's a topic I've been discussing over the last couple of weeks in quite some detail because I'm not on the vaping bandwagon, unfortunately. I do believe that potentially in 5-10 years it's going to be the new smoking and everybody's going to want it banned. Yeah. So I'm a bit concerned about it. I'm concerned for our children, but I'm open to it. I know there's a lot of good that comes from vaping, and I know that a lot of good companies actually support, obviously, stopping smoking through vaping. But I'm on the, shockingly, I'm on the fence a little.
Unusually.
I know.
There's a first for everything. My fantastic pundits are back at 10:30 sharp for the Sunday papers. Some great stories coming in as we speak. They are embargoed till 10:30, but you'll hear them first on Mark Dolan tonight. Next up, why isn't Joe Biden appearing at the King's coronation? And could Donald Trump be going to jail? I'll be asking the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. She's next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Yes, I agree.
11 minutes until tomorrow's papers. They're embargoed until exactly 10:30, at which point my brilliant pundits will be unleashed. We've got news icon John Sargent, whose booming voice you can hear next door. Also, Rebecca Jane, the deputy leader of UKIP, and showbiz legend, the wonderful Christopher Biggins. But it's time now for another legend. It's US News, with the queen of US showbiz royal and political reporting, the jewel in the crown of Mark Dolan tonight, Kinsey Schofield. Hi, Kinsey.
I love you, Mark. Thank you for that introduction.
Kinsey, great to have you back on the show. I hear you turned 23 last week.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. Thank you. I wish I was 23. Those were the days.
Happy birthday. I sent a tweet out and there was an avalanche of love in your direction. My viewers, my listeners can't get enough of the Schofield.
Thank you so much. I'll have to go look. I've been avoiding Twitter lately. It's sometimes a mean place, as I saw in your diary. Those people are savage, Mark. Thanks for calling them out.
Well, they're savage, but I'm the king of free speech, just like you are, and I think bring it on, frankly. Say what you like, because I've got thick skin and a couple of bunions on my feet. Let's talk about Donald Trump. Is he going to jail?
Oh, Mark, I don't know. That's such a tough question. Tuesday, we're going to see his lawyer is saying that there is no way you're going to see Donald Trump in handcuffs. But, I think that might be good for the image. We also have Alan Dershowitz, on the other hand, saying if we get that mugshot, if we get that, that visual could be what sends him directly to the White House. So, Tuesday, everything's going to come to fruition. We'll see how it all unfolds. But a scary time here in the States, Mark.
Indeed. I mean, we are seeing the sequel to the Civil War, and it's actually very sad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at a loss. I don't really, it feels upside down, especially when I don't have a dog in the fight, but if you look at the things that are going on with the Biden family, the Chinese energy companies that are paying members of the Biden family millions of dollars, Hunter's laptop, some of the images on Hunter's laptop, you wonder, is this all a diversion?
Yeah, you do wonder, don't you? Let's talk about your president now, the commander-in-chief, the leader of the free world, Joe Biden, with, I would suggest, a tone-deaf response to that tragic school shooting. Take a listen. We're just loading it up now. Bear with us, Kinsey. Put 10p in the meter.
Down here? Yes, sir. Down the ramp. And we have people lined up on the left over here. Some union leaders and workers. Hey, guys and ladies. Mark is going to be the blue one to the left. How y'all doing? You've got a blue mark, and that's okay.
I'll stand my blue mark, and then I'm going to say load each one of you.
Yes, sir. I'll help you get started.
OK, that was a different clip, but that was essentially the president being told how to walk by his assistant.
The leader of the free world, Mark. I mean, it's terrifying. And you wonder how often this happens and how often it doesn't, because we've seen him wander off stages confused. We've seen him shake hands with the ghost of whoever. Yeah, so that's just pretty terrifying to witness. Always. That's his go-to. That's his go-to.
So let's go back to that awful, tragic school shooting and a tone-deaf response from the president. Here we go. Here's the correct clip. Take a listen.
My name is Joe Biden. I'm Dr. Joe Biden's husband. And I ate Jenny's ice cream, chocolate chip. I came down because I heard there was chocolate chip ice cream. By the way, I have a whole refrigerator full upstairs. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. God.
Now, are we being unfair on Biden? Has that clip been taken out of context?
No, sir. And I mean, when I watch that, I cringe. And I think I was a child during 9/11. And I remember my mom rushing into the room saying, planes have hit buildings in New York. Get up. Let's see what's going on. And I remember the comfort that Bush brought me as a child with the way that he responded to that. He was such a peaceful leader in those first few days. We're going to figure this out. This cannot happen again. And as a child in a very scary situation, I felt like things were going to be okay. What was that, Mark? That wasn't any sort of healing or bringing the country together, or this was a horrible thing, but I want you to know that tomorrow's another day and we're going to figure this out. That wasn't that at all.
I have to say, I don't really judge the president because I think he's lost his marbles. I don't think the guy is well. And I think there is a genuine duty of care to your president to get him out of office as soon as possible. He won't be travelling to London for the coronation on May the 6th. The only proper US dignitary that is coming is Kinsey Schofield. Is that right?
What a great, I'm putting that on my resume, okay? What I will say, Mark, is that Biden allegedly farted in front of, Queen Consort Camilla. I don't know if you remember that amazing headline. So perhaps he wasn't even invited, because I think that is incredibly rude. I would never pass gas in front of a member of the British royal family.
I'm glad to hear it. Let's talk about Gwyneth Paltrow, Oscar-winning actress. She's very talented. She crashed into, a skier crashed into her, and then he sued her. She won, but it became one of the TV events of the year. It was better than any drama. Let's have a look at a couple of videos that our producer, Sophia, has compiled. Take a listen.
Yes, everyone remain seated while the parties leave.
I'm going to make a quick statement. Ms. Paltrow is not going to be making a statement today.
So you can make the statement outside, Mr. Owens.
I will.
There you go. Now, that's at the end. That's a victorious Gwyneth Paltrow saying, I wish you well. Was she taking the mick or did she mean it?
I want to think she meant it. Although in the South, we always say, bless your heart. And we don't mean bless your heart. It means something much more vicious. So perhaps it was a bless your heart moment. But it was a wild trial. At one point, Terry Sanderson compared Gwyneth Paltrow to Jeffrey Epstein, apologized for calling her King Kong. Gwyneth got in trouble for bringing goodies to the court employees, the bailiff. She was bringing them little treats and snacks. She was told not to do that anymore. Taylor Swift was brought up. I mean, it was just so bizarre to watch.
It was bizarre, but it was compulsive viewing. I woke up at 4 a.m. a couple of nights ago and watched an hour. I was absolutely hooked. I'm pleased for her because I know she's a bit up herself, but she was pretty clearly not guilty in that particular case. That guy was a gold digger, no doubt. Let's have a look at the result of my People's Poll tonight, Kinsey. Your reaction briefly, if you can. We've been asking my viewers and listeners, is Joe Biden's rejection of an invitation to the coronation of King Charles an insult to Britain? Well, the public has spoken. 58.1% say yes. And let's be honest, there are, Kinsey, millions of Americans who would like to see their president represented here in Britain on May the 6th.
I mean, even I would like to, because I would like to think that our countries are united and that we will do whatever it takes to stay united. So I think it's bizarre that he's not going to go. But I also am like you, where I go, is he even capable of that? Yeah. I'm not sure if he's capable of it. And don't forget, he did not have a great seat to the Queen's funeral. Maybe there's some resentment there. I don't know what the situation is, but I'm coming, and I'm bringing a skirt the size of Texas. So, maybe he just can't fit because my suitcase is too full.
We can't wait. We will see. Of course, you'll be part of our exclusive coverage here on GB News. Kinsey Schofield is the star of the To Die For Daily podcast, and she also has a website of the same name. Kinsey, see you in a week's time.
Thank you, sir.
Lots more to come, including the Sunday papers next. See you there.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan Tonight. It's time now for tomorrow's papers. And we start with the Mail. Here's what they're leading with. Vegan mob plots to sabotage the Grand National. A secret plot by more than 100 eco-activists to sabotage the most famous race in the country has been exposed by an undercover Mail on Sunday investigation. Militant vegans and animal rights campaigners plan to use ladders and bolt cutters to storm security fences before the race at Antrim, then glue themselves together as a human barricade and sit across the course. The conspiracy, revealed just 2 weeks before the race meeting, was uncovered by a Mail reporter posing as a member of the Animal Rebellion campaign group. last night, tonight, the Mail on Sunday have handed over their dossier to Merseyside police. The Observer next, care homes crisis. Children sent hundreds of miles away. Some of Britain's most vulnerable kids are being moved to care homes more than 300 miles from the neighbourhoods they grew up in. The shocking figures make clear for the first time the scale of the crisis that has long worried child welfare experts. New oil field would blow UK carbon budgets. A single new oil and gas field in the North Sea would be enough to exceed the UK's carbon budgets from its operations alone, according to new analysis, as the government considers fossil fuel expansion. I can hear Rebecca getting very excited, despite the legally binding commitment to net zero. OK, next up, the Independent newspaper now. Emily Maitlis writing in The Independent, Trump's house of cards is about to come crashing down. Is that wishful thinking, or does she speak the truth? Simon Calder, Brexit's to blame for Easter holiday woe and things will only get worse. And abandoned by the country they served, 1,000 Afghans stranded in Pakistan after helping UK forces because the RAF evacuation flights have stopped. The Sunday Telegraph next. Staff can sue their boss if customers offend them. Sunak faces Tory revolt over laws that could leave employers facing an explosion of litigation. UK's Eurovision entrant bashes Boris and Britain, and lockdown children wait a year for NHS help. Also, how about this one? Cows will get flatulence blockers so UK can hit net zero goal. What a load of bullocks. The Sunday Mirror now. TV Sarah on her Strictly Partners baby Joy. This is the star of Dragon's Den who's expecting. Congratulations to her. And also a wonderful story in relation to Christopher Biggins, my pundit's friend, Paul O'Grady, his sad passing. Have a laugh at my funeral. Best pal on Paul's final wish. TV legend Paul O'Grady gave pals an order for his funeral. Have a laugh. His best pal, actress Amanda Mealing, said yesterday, he just told us to have a good time. He'd hate it if everyone was morose. Reflecting there on the sad passing of Paul O'Grady at the very young age of 67. The Sunday Times. New nightmare for patients as strikes return. Life-changing operations axed for the second time. Walkout made worse by Easter shutdown. I know what a woman is, insists Keir Starmer as he seeks to recover ground for female votes, whatever a female is. And in swing state USA, Trump's heartland voters deliver a stormy verdict. And last but not least for now, Daily Star Sunday. Easter bunny in sunnies. Rain, rain, go away. Turn up the heat this holiday. Finally, tropical spring is coming. Hooray. Yes, indeed, it's been floody awful this week. But the weather boffins say that Easter will be warm and sunny. The rest of spring is forecast to be quite tropical, so we can relax and enjoy the sunshine, possibly watching our chocolate melting. And those are your front pages. Reacting to that, we have showbiz legend Christopher Biggins, political commentator and the deputy leader of UKIP, soon-to-be Prime Minister Rebecca Jane.
Obviously.
Never say never. And a true icon of television news broadcasting, John Sargent. Let's get to some of the big stories of the day. And how about this, Rebecca Jane, in the Mail on Sunday? Vegan mob plots to sabotage the Grand National. Great journalism from the Mail.
I'm absolutely sick of vegans. Right, be whatever you want, do whatever you want. My problem is they're so militant in what they do, and this is the problem with the left side of politics. They are absolutely offensive, they are judgmental, and they don't want to hear anybody else's opinion.
Undemocratic.
It's awful. It drives me absolutely wild. Of course, they think that they've got every right to go and, you know, kibosh the Grand National. They don't. Sit down and stop it. Do your own thing, be quiet, live your little life and let us eat meat.
It's not
and a Scotch egg.
It's not all. It's not vegans per se, is it? Because I've got lots of wonderful vegan listeners and viewers, but it's the eco-protesters among them.
I know. But the majority...
Who misuse the word vegan.
Yeah, and the majority of vegan people that I know are very militant in their view.
Really?
And that's the thing that I really struggle with. I support you, do whatever you want, but don't have a problem with me for eating meat.
Yes, I do wonder about that in terms of veganism, that if there are echoes of the mask mandates, where at first when the masks came out, it was like, well, it would be nice if you wore one. Then it became a mandate. Do you think that's going to happen with meat as well, Christopher?
It could do, because they're so strong and very and militant in their views. I think it could easily happen. But, you know, there's room for everybody. If you don't want to eat and you want to be a vegan, be a vegan. But if you want to eat meat, eat it.
Yes.
But I think that the end game for these groups is to get us plant-based, isn't it? Would you ever have that? Would you yield? Would you go plant-based, Biggins, to save the planet?
Oh dear, what a difficult question. I mean,
just picture yourself at the Ivy.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yes.
The chef is cooking your favourite ribeye.
Yes. And
shepherd's pie.
And what do you think I'm offered instead?
It'll be a soya burger.
Yeah, lovely. No, thank you.
No, thanks, but no thanks. Just another glass of champagne.
Please, thank you.
Well, what do you think about this? Because it is a concern for the government, this civil unrest, isn't it? It's not a good look for the government when these things happen, John.
The trouble is, there used to come a time when, particularly in the BBC, if we knew there was going to be a demonstration, we would be very careful about not covering it in order not to encourage people.
Nice.
But, you know, this is... You sort of now you think, right, the Grand National, what should we do? We'll wreck that.
Yeah.
And then we could go on wreck Wimbledon, and we could do this. Do you think what an extraordinary sort of... We're into a news cycle now where these things are almost required, aren't they? That's what I find disturbing.
But do you think it's poor journalism by the Mail to run this?
No, but you just sort of feel, I wish it was a different... I wish it wasn't sort of, isn't this all exciting and the Grand National makes the Grand National more interesting? No, it doesn't. It does for newspapers and for journalism. They make, oh, good, we've got the vegan story, haven't we? The vegan mob story to work on. We don't have to bother about horses running and people doing normal things. And I suppose that's the idea of let's try and get to the next sensation. Let's try and hope that, oh, I don't know, that one of the horses gets put down again this year. Well, they probably will be put down, but... That's to whip it up like that when it's in so many ways it's such an innocent pastime, isn't it?
And also there are only 100 people rebelling on that day, supposedly, whereas thousands of people, thousands, tens of thousands, are really out there. Millions, if they watch television, are out there to enjoy a fantastic sport.
Glorified, entitled, attention-seeking.
Normally middle class as well.
Yes, of course.
University educated on a forever gap year.
Absolutely.
John, can I ask you about the politics of this, though? Because, I mean, I've said it's undemocratic, not because I don't believe in freedom of expression, the right to protest, but this is clearly illegal activity. Does the government need to be seen to come down hard on it?
Well, I certainly can't understand why, if someone causes enormous upset, which these people are obviously going to try and cause enormous upset, they should be sort of punished accordingly, not sort of feeling, oh, well, you have a right to express your feelings. Actually, you don't have a right to at every place.
Or glue yourself to the motorway.
Yeah, I don't have a right. So immediately off, I go to Aintree, and I have a right to do all sorts of things. No, you don't. Just ordinary rights of private property and all the rest of it. But all that seems to be forgotten.
But they don't think about other people.
No, they don't think about other
that's
people.
the problem.
They don't think about the idea of how should we all behave with regard to this. It is, I'm afraid, one of those... And this is the old man speaking, really. But in the past, people used to think, oh, well, I don't think one ought to do that. There'd be a sense in which there's sort of things you could do and things you couldn't do.
That it's not cricket.
Or it's rather odd behaviour. No, why can't they let other people... It'd be all that. Now, that has gone now, hasn't it?
Yes, the idea that this kind of thing would be churlish to destroy the day, not just for the thousands there, as Biggins said, but the millions watching. However, there is a flip side to this. These groups would argue that the ends justify the means, that they are the modern-day suffragettes, that the planet is on fire, that we have an emergency. That's their argument.
No, but I think this is where I wish they'd, I don't know, spend more time studying, I don't know, philosophy, or more time studying how these subjects have been dealt with in the past. You don't have a right because you think something. But people seem to think nowadays that if they feel something, that's their truth, and they must impose their truth on others. Well, this is not sort of part of some elaborate, sophisticated philosophy. It just seems to be crude and stupid.
It turns me off their point. I'm not keen on the Grand National. I don't like it. The weather's awful. It's blooming Liverpool, for goodness sakes. It's never a fun experience for me. I don't like the way that the animals are hurt and everything that unfolds there. But with this, It doesn't make me focus on that. It makes me focus on their just idiotic behaviour. And actually, I'm going the other way.
But look what they did with the motorways too.
Oh, don't.
People couldn't get to work. People lost money. People died because they couldn't get to a hospital. There were so many things that happened because of what they did. But they don't think about that.
No, they don't care.
Rebecca Jane, new oil field would blow the UK carbon budget. So this is a single new oil and gas field in the North Sea would be enough to exceed the UK's carbon allowance from its operations alone. The government is looking at drilling. What do you think?
I think that there is no climate crisis, Mark, and I'm sick of hearing about it.
Now, a majority of science would disagree with that, wouldn't it?
I know, but unfortunately, I do disagree with it because I've been subjected. I'm not professing to be a scientist. I'm not professing to be right. It is just my opinion. I have been subjected to numerous presentations from different scientists, actually, who say that the climate crisis is not. It's just a bunch of hysteria, and it's not there. We need to start making our own fuel. We need to stop relying on other countries. You know, if we have to do what we have to do to protect our people.
So, debating climate science aside, Biggins, we are in an energy crisis. We have oil in the North Sea. We have coal beneath our feet. There's even shale gas. Do we start to explore those options, do you think?
I think so, without any doubt. It's on our doorstep. Why shouldn't we be looking into it and getting those resources out for us to use?
We've seen strong messaging, haven't we, John, from the Prime Minister? Stop the boats, settle the nerves of the international bond markets, on whose largesse we're now so reliant. Inflation should be down by the end of the year. So you've got the economy, you've got the boats. Do you think this could be another winner for Rishi Sunak, being seen to water down the net zero agenda?
Well, there's always a temptation to do that. I mean, I disagree with Rebecca on this. I think it's a very serious problem. We've got to take it seriously. Even I've got now, or my wife's got, an electric car. So, I mean, we've taken the ultimate decision as a family.
You've gone woke, John.
Oh, no.
You'll be voting Liberal Democrat next.
I don't know. But
No, we won't.
When it comes to something like this, I would just like it analysed in a much more sensible way. We're going to go on using carbon fuel in different ways in the foreseeable future, right? We're not going to just go to zero. Right? It's net zero from what it was. It's not the idea that there'll be no oil, there'll be nothing ever used. So the idea that we will stop this particular project in the North Sea and then import at greater cost the same amount of oil from elsewhere seems to be bonkers, you know. And I think we should just bring these ideas together and say, and what are we now doing in order to produce the oil that we will need? The oil we'll need to put on our bikes to make the bike, you know, everything. The idea that you don't need oil, you don't need plastics. You can just sort of stop all that stuff because it's carbon. That isn't going. It's not going to work like that. It's a question of trying to get down what you can get down, but not doing things like this, which just make you look good, makes people then feel, oh, good, I'm glad we're stopping that.
OK.
Can I say before you move on, Mark,
Go for it.
On the front page, I was very moved today to see television coverage of little Amal, the 12-foot puppet, which is the Syrian refugees thing. It was fantastic. The puppet is amazing. Yeah. And the reaction it was getting from the public was wonderful. They really believed, I think, this was a person, and it was extraordinary.
It really is inspiring. The 12-foot puppet of a Syrian refugee that's become a global symbol of human rights, appearing in Hampstead Heath and Parliament Hill in support of displaced children around the world.
Very, very impressive. Let's have more things like that in the news.
Definitely. A good news story. Well, you always get good news with Biggins and my pundits tonight. Rebecca Jane and John Sargent will be back. And next up, we've got The Express with a big story about illegal immigration. See you in 2.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel. Welcome back to Mark Dolan Tonight and the Sunday papers. Fresh, hot off the press. I'm delighted to say, by the way, Cal, Maria and Sophia have done a brilliant job tonight. Ark in the gallery as well. I've got the dream team. But listen, let's have a look at the Sunday Express. Better thank producer James as well, the boss. I'll get in big trouble for not mentioning him. OK, the Sunday Express. Rishi has 6 months to sort the boat's crisis. The Prime Minister has been warned he has just half a year to fix the migrant crisis or face having to call an early election. The PM knows he has to stop the rising tide of small boats across the Channel to stand any chance of victory at the end of next year. But senior aides fear a Tory wipeout in late 2024 if he goes to the country after a summer in which thousands more illegal immigrants have landed. OK, well, look, I'll get to that story shortly with Christopher Biggins, Rebecca Jane and John Sargent. John, a concerning story in The Observer. Before we get to the migrants, care homes crisis, children sent hundreds of miles away.
Yeah, this is just one of those just terribly sad stories. These kids, they haven't got enough foster parents in London, so there are literally hundreds of kids with nowhere to go, so they're sending them hundreds of miles outside London to care homes. Now, I mean, this really is grim. All right, we're now meant to be a rich country. Are we a rich country? What are we doing?
Dickensian.
And why is it? What I don't understand is suddenly we're told the worst. We're not told the beginning bit, which is, could you foster a child if you're in London? Could we have more of that? Could there be a campaign for fostering children? Oh, no. We don't hear any word of that. We get crisis. They're being sent. So it means that whatever happens, there are children now who are going to be suffering. And it's too late. This is the only warning we've had properly of something which has been known about, presumably, for months.
Yes, Rebecca Jane, this is the plight of children and vulnerable kids and kids with problems is a great passion and a vocation of yours.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's pretty tragic, to be fair. But, you know, there's a lot of things in this country that need a complete and utter overhaul, and this is one of them. And I like what you say there, John. You know, we haven't heard about this. You know, why have we not heard about it? I do hear, obviously I'm from up in the north and on our radios at the moment, we do have some campaigns about fostering, but this needs to have a bigger light shone on it. because it's important.
It really does.
I suspect, by the way, can I just add this very quickly? One of the problems that may be is that this starts off by being a London story.
Yeah.
And there's tremendous effort in newsrooms in all the years I've been in newsrooms. Oh, what a pity it's a London story. And they spend so much of their time sort of playing down London because the other parts of the country get cross about it. This is the assumption. So, I don't want to do another London story. And you just think, well, you may not want to do a London story, but these kids are suffering, and it's a practical story which affects us all.
It's a national story.
Playing down a city that has a population of 11 million people.
11 million people saying, oh, no, we can't do that because it's London.
Well, Biggins, I think, you know, we are a bit broke as a country at the moment. I've spoken quite strongly about the public sector's wage demands, all the rest of it, inflation. But actually, when it comes to the welfare of kids, surely it's money, no object.
Of course. I mean, you know, this is our future. These are the people who are going to broaden everything that happens in our lives. And we can't treat people like this. It's a bit like the war, you know, when the children were sent down into the country because they were frightened they were going to be bombed. You know, well, there's none of that going on at the moment. They're just sending them down because there's nothing else to do with them. And you're right, absolutely right. We should have been told that there is a situation which we could help.
John, I've only got a couple of seconds on this, but former political editor of ITN, chief political correspondent at the BBC, Rishi has 6 months to sort the boats crisis. Do you agree with the Sunday Express's editorial there?
Well, I mean, as always, it's a sort of Sunday story, so they build it up more. And the truth is that what you've got to try and do when you've got a problem as difficult as the boat people, this is a real tricky problem in all kinds of ways, legal, how it comes across the public, everything. And what I think you've got to try and do is to get the movement down. If you get the movements in the right direction, if people can see by the end of the summer that, in fact, there aren't so many, that the system that they've elaborated is kind of working, that may be not good enough, of course not good enough, but maybe good enough politically. I don't mean good enough for all of us, but do you know what I mean?
But for the public to see that things are moving, that the dial has been moved.
That's it. And to see things happen, like inflation coming down, the number of illegal immigrants arriving is coming down. That's really all I think that the Conservatives can hope for, but it could be very significant.
My sincere thanks to John Sargent, Rebecca Jane and Christopher Biggins. Loved every second of their company. And I've enjoyed every second of your company. Thank you so much for listening on DAB+, whether you're, I don't know, you might be in the car, you might be a taxi driver or an HGV, or you're at home going up to some errands. And thank you for watching as well. Of course, this show is global. You can see us for free anywhere on the planet on YouTube. I'll be back tomorrow from 9 for my big opinion and my take at 10. So many big stories to get through, so we'll do it then. Let me tell you that Headliners is next, a hilarious look at tomorrow's papers with 3 top comedians. See you tomorrow. Thanks for your company.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. After a relatively cloudy start to April, there are changes on the way as we head into the second half of the weekend. High pressure is building in from the west, helping to settle things down and bring us some fair weather and push this low pressure centre out of the way. For Saturday evening, though, we still do have some occluded fronts in present, and that will bring outbreaks of rain to western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, and also push its way into southeastern areas of England as well. As we move into the second half of the night, though, we start feeding in some drier air from the Scandinavian region, and that's just going to help clear some of that cloud out the way for parts of Northumberland, Yorkshire, but temperatures are also going to drop off here a bit more, but generally holding up around 4 or 5 degrees Celsius. That area is going to continue to push its way in from the east as we move throughout Sunday, helping to break up that cloud across southern areas of Scotland, central eastern England, and Sunday is looking like a much brighter and sunnier day here. Further west, that front is just still lingering with a bit of cloud and patchy rain possible across Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, but temperatures out in the west around 14 degrees Celsius. It will feel chilly, though, in the breeze across parts of Suffolk, Kent and Essex, but that will tend to ease its way out as we move throughout Sunday evening. During the night, we'll hold on to a good number of clear intervals, and that will allow temperatures to drop away quite widely, so there could be a widespread frost, particularly across parts of England and Wales. So a bit of a chilly start to the new week, but a sunny one once again, thanks to high pressure in place and a good number of sunny intervals. The sunshine will turn hazier for Northern Ireland as the breeze begins to strengthen as well, and it's all due to these fronts that are wanting to push their way in again from the west. But high pressure is still trying to remain in charge, and certainly for southeastern areas of the UK, it will remain rather settled as we head throughout the new week, but western areas just need to watch out for some rain that will push its way in for Wednesday. Bye-bye.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right